to SoCal. Most of these names probably shouldn't be that much of a surprise for you, but we are super excited to feature them on stream. So you'll be seeing a Hariyama, Azumarill, Annihilate, Bronzong, Hydreigon, and Goldango on Grant's side. And on Allan's side, in that red over there, you're going to see a Weavile, Skeledirge, Goldango, Talonflame, Kingambit, and Dragonite.
I love the flexibility on Grant's side. If we talk about that first of all, you've got a Trick Room mode where obviously you've got Pokemon like Hariyama and the Bronzong that love to operate in that slower speed tier. But then on the flip side, Pokemon like Annihilate with that Choice Scarf, Annihilate can go for something like that final Gambit. Yes, it'll obviously take KO itself in the process, but it could get rid of a really heavy hitter that's going to annoy the other Pokemon that you have next to it. And then having that other faster mode Pokemon like Hydreigon as well, we know like to be a little bit speedy. Azumarill can go for priority moves, so on and so forth, and Goldango. I mean, I'm surprised to see another second weakness policy Goldango in play, but when things like the Choice Scarf are on the Annihilate, Focus Sash on the Hydreigon, then it kind of lends itself a little bit more to that Goldango. Maybe invest a little bit more in bulk. Possibly it's going to be a slower variant, can utilize Trick Room a little bit better potentially, or at least if there is a speed tie and there's a Goldango on the, not a speed tie, but if you're against an opposing Goldango and you're running it slower and want to set up Trick Room, then you will have the advantage. On Allan's side, however, again, love the flexibility of Pokemon on here as well. That Kingambit, a Pokemon with Calton Cleave that I think could be a really interesting move as well, you know, being able to, I think it's 85 base power, that can hit really, really hard. It doesn't check accuracy as well, just making it a little bit more reliable than some of the moves we've seen on today's broadcast already. And Pokemon as well, like Talonflame, I know you'll love to see.
Yeah, and what's surprising is, because this is an open team sheet format, we can actually see that the Annihilate is Vital Spirit versus the usual Defiant here, but Weavile and Goldango going to be the lead here of choice, as Bronzong and Annihilate are going to hit the field here for Grant. So you got some like fake out pressure here with the Weavile as well, and then the Goldango going to be sort of free to move. Does have to worry, like doesn't actually have to worry about the Rage Fist from that Annihilate, but that Bronzong, like you said, one of the modes that Grant's team can carry.
I mean, we talked about Dark types being so dominant at the moment, and here's a Weavile with a Dark and Ice typing. Weavile, however, doesn't have, on this set that Allan is running, doesn't have a Dark type move to be able to utilize into something like that Bronzong.
Oh, I just want to say, this Annihilate actually doesn't have Rage Fist.
Yeah, it doesn't have it on this one. Just talking about it in general, it's really cool, but it's nice to not actually see it. Pokemon like having the U-turn as well, considering it's carrying that Choice Scarf from Grant's side, allows you to switch out. So that's possibly where it's had to take the drop and not carry that Rage Fist.
All right, so Bronzong here sees the Weavile and goes, you know what? I don't want to have to worry about any sort of like Dark type moves you're carrying right now, which actually it's not really, but as it does go for the Terastallize here, it's going to be Dark type Terastallize. Annihilate, just mentioning that U-turn right now, allowing Grant to pivot here is going to be able to do super effective damage into that Weavile. Grant's going to just be like, hey, I've got two other things right now to be able to like bring into here. Hovering over that Hariyama, which has that Guts ability and is carrying that Flame Orb, which is going to boost that attack stat, making it a little bit more of a heavy hitter, is going to be the Pokemon of choice here to hit the field in place of that Annihilate.
Yeah, and the Dark type here, the low kick is certainly going to hurt, but I was going to say the Dark type Terra type is going to be nice to avoid, you know, great damage from the Shadow Ball that's on the Choice Specs Goldango on Allan's side. Having that defensive capability with Dark typing allows you to survive that, something that the Psychic type previously on that Bronzong was going to be significantly hit by, particularly with Goldango. Same type of attack bonus, Choice Specs would have really, really hurt. The other nice thing is here, not only have you got Trick Room up on Grant's side, but as you mentioned, Regina, you get Hariyama in with that orb that now has burnt it already. It's ready to go. Guts is going to be activated. It's going to be hitting very hard in this Trick Room. Goldango, obviously, with this Ghost typing, doesn't have to worry about any fighting type moves at this point, but then Hariyama still can utilize something like Earthquake, and that's going to hurt the Goldango as well.
What's wild to me too is I really love how, again, like I cannot stress enough how much I love terastallizing this part, because it allows you so many new pivoting moves. Like Bronzong before, right? You double down into it because you know if you deny Trick Room, you stop a majority of Grant's plan. And now you're in a spot where you're like, you're Grant and you realize, hey, you know what? I can still have this happen. Like even if they double down into me, because I'm changing my typing, I don't have to worry about that as much. Of course, like you could also just, that puts you in a spot of like forgetting typing sometimes and seeing that happen. Dragonite though is going to hit the field here in place of that Weavile. Dragonite, I know some people are very excited to see Dragonite come back into action here, as Goldango is going to be taking the Nightshade here. Hariyama is going to go for that Earthquake on this turn. Levitate not going to affect that Bronzong. Doesn't have to worry about that Dragonite either, but Goldango, the Pokemon you really want to hit here, is going to get knocked out thanks to that super effective move and that boost from Guts as well.
Yeah, and of course, I think the Nightshade, nice to just make sure that you're going to guarantee the KO on that Goldengo. You know, Earthquake is not going to get the same type of attack bonus from that Hariyama, so possibly, depending on any bulk that's been put into it, that's information these players don't have in an open team sheet format. You don't know the stats and the way that these Pokemon have been trained by the trainers, so being able to just guarantee the KO out there, I think is really nice. Again, got to credit Allan for the adjustment, realizing that Earthquake was coming this way, bringing in the Flying type Dragonite, means it's not going to have to take any unnecessary damage, and it can again apply a lot of pressure to Hariyama with potentially something like, you know, it can go for the extreme speed, it can go for Dragon Claw. There's a lot of moves that it can deal with here, and it's going to be able to take a lot of hits as well. It doesn't worry about these fighting type moves, obviously doesn't worry about the Earthquake. Weavile coming in here, I think is nice for Allan to kind of start stalling through some of these Trick Room turns. You can go for a fake out into Hariyama and just allow it to not deal any damage to this turn, while Dragonite maybe targets down into that opposing Bronzong and just tries to deal with it, because Bronzong, again, it loves to be in Trick Room too. It can go for these Nightshades, going to be dealing 50 damage to the opposing Pokemon, as Nightshade is calculated off the stat, not the HP stat, the level stat, so many terms. It's going to be able to deal that every single time guaranteed, and at the same time it can go the helping hand boost to that Hariyama to deal big damage.
Yeah, and so this is actually one of the Pokemon that we'd mentioned like, alongside Dragonite. The fact that you can Terrasilize normal, and all of a sudden Extreme Speed, which was a move that you could use just to pick up KOs, is now a startlingly scary move here. The fake out from Weavile going into the Bronzong. Extreme Speed is going to hit into that Hariyama, does a massive amount of damage. Bronzong flinching obviously from this turn. Hariyama going for an Earthquake is going to be able to pick up a knockout here on Weavile, and is actually also going to hit the Dragonite because it no longer has like that flying type. Does a little bit, just like a quarter there. The thing to me though is that Extreme Speed in this format is so scary, because even if you have something like Trick Room or Tailwind, it doesn't matter, because Extreme Speed is that priority, and we saw how much damage those was. Hariyama does have like the close combat, so if you had been in a spot where like maybe you could have tried to like take care of that Dragonite first, right? Because I feel like maybe the Terrasilize might have been obvious here, because your Extreme Speed ignores that sort of speed tier.
Exactly, and again, Dragonite stacking up with something like the Choice Band means that Extreme Speed is just going to be devastating, and when there's no Intimidate options here for Grant to be able to deal with it, it's just going to be able to, like you say, negate the Trick Room that Grant's been able to set up. A Pokemon as well that Grant now has to contend with is that Kingambit. Both Bronzong and Hariyama have very low HP, and again, in speed tier kind of countability, something like a Sucker Punch on Kingambit is going to be able to pick up a KO here.
I honestly just sort of love like this end game here from Allan. Like, yeah, he's down on the Pokemon count, and he does have to just, you know, to stall out Trick him a little bit. Hariyama gonna get returned here. We had seen that Extreme Speed did more than enough, like, to deal half for an extra knockout here, but Annihilate gonna come into that spot here, is going to make sure it doesn't get hit by Extreme Speed because of that Ghost typing here, as Bronzong is just gonna do a little bit of damage here to that Kingambit on, as it does use Nightshade here. Kotai Cleave is gonna be able to pick up the knockout here on that Bronzong. I think this might actually be the last turn of Trick Room, so Annihilate coming in here still does put it in a spot where it could be the fastest Pokemon and doesn't have to worry about that Extreme Speed.
Yeah, I really like the play here by Allan, knowing that the Extreme Speed is going to be able to pick up the KO on the partner Pokemon to the Bronzong, allowing the Kingambit to be like, hey Bronzong, there's really nothing you can do to me. Calton Cleave is going to be able to pick up the KO against you, and now Grant has this Hariyama pinned with the Annihilate. Of course, we know Annihilate can deal some significant damage as well, but that Dragonite with Extreme Speed is going to be able to target down into Hariyama. Again, Hariyama on the flip side can utilize something like a Fake Out, so there's a lot of mind games coming down here. The Annihilate's the Pokemon I've got my eye on though.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think if Allan can get rid of this Annihilate, he's in a much better position. Oh, but we actually just see a forfeit here, and I want to say that was Allan. Yeah, forfeiting here, sure. Which I think is actually interesting, because I think there's still a way to maybe get out of there. However, so I think in previous generations, right, where like you don't forfeit because you're trying to get more information out, we're now in the spot where, again, like when you have
it all,
you know all your opponent's like moves and like what the end game could sort of be. So maybe trying to save time and just be like, okay, well, I know what I have to fix, and I think the biggest thing there is you have to deny that Trick Room.
Yes, and I think again that was the key thing that Grant was able to do, is not only get the Trick Room up, but like you mentioned, having Annihilate coming in very late at the end of that game one meant that as soon as Trick Room was over, once again Annihilate's in the driving seat and is going to be able to start dominating through the game, and Allan just unfortunately didn't have the capability to deal with it. Things like the Dragonite, yes, we talked about how amazing Choice Band is at dealing out damage, but then you're locked into a normal type move, you're against a Ghost type Pokemon, there's really little room that you can move here, and that just meant Annihilate was able to pin down the Pokemon on Allan's side. Going into game 2 on Allan's team, I really liked the fact that Kingambit was there, but I would have certainly tried to bring it in a little bit earlier on. Pokemon like the Weavile, although it was very useful to go for things like the Fake Out, the Low Kick, we still did do a significant chunk to that opposing Bronzong, particularly when it did go for that Dark Terror type. But just unfortunately, I felt Weavile generally was kind of underwhelming at this point. I feel like you maybe need to start dealing out some big damage with Pokemon like, you know, even Skelly Dirge going for something like a Torch Song and just boosting up the special attack, allowing you to be able to deal some big damage going forward. Again, being a Ghost type on Skelly Dirge's side, it's not going to worry about Hariyama going for fighting type moves and possibly using that type advantage even against Grant's Pokemon with fighting types and things like that could be what Allan needs to be able to come back into game 2.
I do love like seeing here though that Grant seems to be switching up his strategy just a little bit. We are going to see him not lock in that Bronzong, or is thinking about not locking in, and I think part of that is when you're looking at Allan's team, right, you can just be like, okay, if I can contend with like maybe like what Talonflame is going on, there's actually a lot that I think the Hariyama can do against Grant's team, because you've got Earthquake, which can like, you know, do a lot of damage to that Skeletor's as well, and the Weavile, but it's just all of a sudden, instead of just like regular mind games, all of a sudden you're thinking about like, okay, what mode is he going to do? And I think that's what's so nice about having something like a fast and a slow mode on your team.
Well, this is what we talked about in team preview, right? The Grant's team is so flexible, and particularly when you're that one game up, you can run the risk, you can decide to shake things up, and that's what we've got coming up from Grant here. Annihilate and Hydreigon against the Goldengo and Weavile. Yes, Weavile can go for a fake out to something like the Hydreigon, but there's really not a lot stopping that Annihilate, particularly with its Choice Scarf. It's going to be fast.
And I think, yeah, that Goldengo is like kind of in a rough spot, because like you said, Weavile goes for the fake out, Hydreigon doesn't move this turn, doesn't set up Tailwind, but then what? Like Annihilate is free to go for it. And I think, again, that typing on Annihilate, I'm so sad about Marshadow still to this day, but you know, I'm happy that Annihilate lives on in spirit of that, where like, you know, that normal fighting is just such a terrifying combination, because all your usual counters for it suddenly just don't work against Annihilate, and it's just saying, hey, you guys all left me behind in Gen 1, and I'm back with a vengeance, with a new form here. But we're actually just going to see a Terrestrializing from the get-go here on turn 1. It's going to be on Grant's side of the field, as that Hydreigon is going to be going into that Fire-type Terrestrializing. I think one of the most popular terraforms for Hydreigon, just because of that Heat Wave that you can get.
Yeah, either that or Steel type, very, very popular, but again can apply a lot of pressure to the Ice type on the Weavile on the opposing side. Annihilate actually just going to go straight for the U-turn here, breaking the Focus Sash on that opposing Weavile, meaning that Hydreigon's in a great position to start cleaning up. Again, something like a Heat Wave is going to deal super effective damage to both of Allan's Pokemon, of course, as long as it's able to connect. And our track record today has not been strong for those moves that do not have 100% accuracy. Obviously, it is going to flinch this particular turn, but following up, considering Make It Rain, is it going to deal, I was not saying not too much damage, but actually that was still a significant chunk thanks to the choice specs on the opposing Goldengo. But going into this next turn, Goldengo isn't going to be as strong thanks to the drop that it gets.
Yeah, and now I think if you can try to figure out like which Goldengo is faster, right? Hydreigon is sort of in a free spot to go for a Tailwind and just guarantee that next turn that Grant's own Goldengo will be faster no matter what. Weavile is typically a very fast Pokemon, and so I think now you're in a spot where you're thinking to yourself, what do I want more? Speed control of the knockouts here, because your Goldengo took a lot of damage on that switch in thanks to that specs boosted damage, but now, you know, you're minus like 1 essentially thanks to the specs and like the offset of the -2 there. So you're still in a weird spot where I think if you lose the speed tie, you might lose your Goldengo.
Yeah, Weavile is going to go for low kick. It's able to survive though, as Hydreigon is going to go for the Tailwind, boosting up the speed on Grant's side of the field. Goldengo on Grant's side now in a phenomenal position to go for that Shadow Ball into the opposing Goldengo that we know is carrying choice specs on a Focus Sash, so we can get the one-hit KO. Absolutely amazing to see that come out from the Goldengo.
I really appreciate that here from Grant, just you know, like, hey, you know what, I've seen the low kick from before, we're just gonna make sure that at least I have a chance to sort of survive. But the Talonflame coming back now onto the field, so now you can just try to sort of match that Tailwind. The priority Tailwind with Gale Wings, I know we were all really sad when it sort of got changed and, you know, all that, but
I think it was needed though.
Yeah, Talonflame was just sort of like a terror of a predator at that point, but it's sort of nice, like, again, like, this generation feels like a resurgence of old Pokemon getting new life into them.
Definitely, and I think particularly if you're a veteran of UGC, a lot of the Pokemon that, you know, took you to victory earlier in formats, you know, 2015, 2014, are able to now come back into the fray a little bit more, and it is breathing that fresh breath of life that I think has has been needed for these Pokemon to come back into the meta. Coming into this situation, however, you know, the Talonflame, it is going to go straight for a Protect here, knowing that it is going to be vulnerable to a lot of the moves that Grant's side can throw out at this point in time. Weavile's going to go for the priority Ice Shard, will be able to get the KO, even though it's Fire type on the Hydreigon, it just had such little HP remaining, and it means that Weavile's able to get rid of that threat on the opposing side. Grant, however, does still have the Goldengo that can have so much utility. It is going to go for the Thunderbolt, however, and that's, I think, a wise Protect coming out from Allan. So I think a strong turn from him. The issue we've got now on Grant's side is you have now the flexibility to bring a Pokemon in from the back. Pokemon like that Azumarill that can now do a lot of pressure to something like the opposing Talonflame, and even Weavile doesn't have a lot of HP remaining. Something's going to be able to take it out. It's not a bulky Pokemon.
It's so wild to me that, like, after we introduce things like Terrain or like Psychic Terrain specifically, that all of a sudden priority moves are just everywhere at once, right? Because now it doesn't even matter if like your Talonflame can set up the Tailwind, because Azumarill has access to something like Aqua Jet, where if it's able to just knock out that Weavile, right, then this Talonflame's in a little bit like more trouble, because Weavile is such a fast Pokemon, and it's so threatening to that Goldengo in a lot of ways. But I've been appreciating a lot how often we've been seeing a lot of priority type moves here, and I think we might actually also maybe see Terrasilize to try to keep like this Weavile from taking any sort of super effective damage, because, you know, Play Rough, if it connects, can just automatically knock out this Weavile. Maybe even that Talonflame, which could also be a ghost type, you know, would actually take a lot of damage from a Shadow Ball, but could at least negate the fact that Thunderbolt would almost knock it out. And what is actually what we're going to see is that Talonflame going ghost with that ghost type Terrasalizing. I'm going to make sure that, hey, if it gets hit by a Thunderbolt, we won't have to worry about it, but that Gale Wing's going to allow Tailwind to go up as a priority here. We're now going to see that Weavile actually goes for Ice Spinner here into that Azumarill.
Yeah, not dealing too much damage, just a little bit of chip here, and Goldengo able to follow up with that Make It Rain. Is going to be able to get the KO on Weavile, not on the Talonflame, however. The ghost typing here, you know, just making it vulnerable to something like a potential Shadow Ball in the follow-up turn. But I think the key thing on Allan's side was getting that Tailwind up. Azumarill is able to follow up with the Liquidation, but utilizing that Gale Wind just allowed you to be able to have the potential to be able to get that Tailwind up. Speed is now on Allan's side, but the Pokemon advantage is just unfortunately in Allan's case for Grant.
Yeah, this is kind of terrifying, because Goldengo is like such just a good Pokemon to just be like consistently, like once it has that speed advantage, is absolutely terrifying. And now we even know that Dragonite won't get that boost from extreme speed with a normal Terrasilize, because we just saw that Talonflame go down with the Ghost Terra typing on it. You know, so that's not to say that Dragonite still doesn't pack a punch, but you're asking a lot from Dragonite, where it has to lock into something with a ban and not able to touch Goldengo if it locks into extreme speed.
Well, it has to lock into Waterfall. That's literally the only move it can go for. Dragon Claw can't hit Azumarill, extreme speed and low kick can't hit something like Goldengo, for example. The only option is Waterfall, and, you know, Azumarill's going to laugh in the face of that. It's going to be able to take that all day long, and Goldengo can follow up as well into that Dragonite, because it has the flexibility.
Oh my god.
It is going to go for Dragon Claw, however, into Goldengo. I mean, I think long term, I'm not sure where the potential is going to be on this. You know, you can't change this out. Azumarill is going to be having a great time here, and it's able to go for the Play Rough and get the KO, taking a 2-0 victory for Grant.
I really love the way that Grant played this. I like we had mentioned, or like you had pointed out during that team preview, right, where you have sort of those two modes of slow and fast, and I think Grant having like the one up on that first game was able to really just sort of decide, hey, at this point though, I'm gonna go in a little bit faster, because I think you're gonna think that I'm gonna go slow. Although I think the fact that Allan brought the Talonflame just kind of played into the fact that maybe he read into that just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Talonflame's definitely a Pokemon you want in a faster matchup, not when Trick Room's on the field. Yes, you can maybe go for that one Gale Wind's Brave Bird,